Well, another bombshell dropped in the investigation against Joe Biden and potential wrongdoing or bribery with foreign national companies. Senator Chuck Grassley, came out and did a big press conference today. Here's a clip from it that kind of details what the latest bombshell is from today.
Let me assist for the purposes of more transparency on this subject. The 1023 produced to the House committees redacted reference that the foreign national who allegedly bribed Joe and Hunter Biden allegedly has audio recordings of his conversation with them. 17 such recordings. According to the 1023, the foreign national possesses 15 audio recordings of phone calls between him and Hunter Biden. According to the 1023, the foreign national possesses 2 audio recordings of phone calls between him and then Vice President Joe Biden. These recordings were allegedly kept as a sort of insurance policy for the foreign national in case that he got into a tight spot.
Okay, with us to help break down this entire Joe Biden scandal, because I know it's a lot to absorb. There's a lot of moving pieces. A lot happens all the time. But with us now is someone who's been following this story very closely and is going to break it down for us. Garland Nixon joins us now, political analyst and radio talk show host. Garland, welcome to the show.
Thank you. And a former investigator, I might add. So
All right.
I have some experience in this particular area of expertise.
Even better. So we've been hearing this for a long time, and it's touted by, of course, people on the left, Democrats, as a conspiracy theory that Joe Biden and his family was somehow profiting off of Joe Biden being vice president of the United States. Can you walk us through what this investigation is and where they're at with it, and if there's any real there?
Certainly. So, a very brief background. 2014, the United States is involved in a coup in Ukraine. The government's overthrown. A very pro-U.S. government comes into power. Very shortly after, Ukraine started getting flooded by members of the Obama administration and their families, one being, of course, Joe Biden's son, Hunter Biden, who got a job working for this company called Burisma. Burisma was a gas company, and it was apparently alleged to be had been involved in some criminal activity. There were investigations going on. In fact, the funds of this company had been frozen in England at the time. So there was the equivalent of their attorney general was doing an investigation. We know that shortly thereafter, Joe Biden, who became, effectively the governor of this new colony of the United States, bragged on tape that he was able to get this person fired with the threat of holding back a $1 billion loan.
We actually have that clip. So let's actually play that clip real quick, okay, just to refresh everyone's memory.
So I got Ukraine, and I remember going over convincing our team, or others too, convincing us that we should be providing for loan guarantees. And I went over for, I guess, the 12th, 13th time to Kyiv, and I was supposed to announce that there was another $1 billion loan guarantee. And I had gotten a commitment from Poroshenko and from Yatsenyuk that they would take action against the state prosecutor, and they didn't. So they said they were walking out to press conference. I said, no, I said, we're not going to give you the $1 billion. They said, you have no authority. You're not the president. The president said. I said, call him. I said, I'm telling you, you're not getting the $1 billion. I said, you're not getting the $1 billion. I'm going to be leaving here. And I think it was, 6 hours? I said, I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Well, son of a bitch. Got fired.
Okay, so there's that.
And they brought in a new prosecutor. Here's what's interesting. They brought in a new prosecutor, but the Rada, which is their equivalent of the Ukrainian Congress, had to change the law because the guy that they brought in with a prosecutor as the new prosecutor wasn't even a lawyer. So he had no idea what he was doing or how to continue. So they imagine bringing in an attorney general that's a plumber. But that's effectively what they did. So here's where we are now, and this is why it's important. That gives us a good solid background. What has happened now is recently, late April, early May, a whistleblower came from the FBI to Congress and said, look, The FBI has a document wherein they have had someone come to them and say that Joe Biden and his son apparently got, the number seems to be 5 to 10 million, maybe 5 million each. Don't hold me to those numbers. They were bribed to do this. So the Congress says to the FBI, hey, we're your oversight. We need to see that. The FBI says, no, we're not going to give it to you. Congress then says, look, if you don't, we're going to hold you in contempt. This is an unclassified document. It is not classified. So the FBI then says, okay, they decide, apparently, I guess they talk to their counsel and they figure out they have to. It's an unclassified document. Anybody could see, you and I could see it, but they didn't want to show it to Congress. They bring it to Congress, and they didn't bring it to Congress. Congress had to go to a classified facility to see an unclassified document, and it was highly redacted. Well, Chuck Grassley gets his hands on this document unredacted, and he finds out, according to Grassley, who, if you look at his record, there's no reason to believe that Chuck Grassley would make these things up. Apparently, whoever this person is, this foreign national who made the assertion, apparently this person was involved with this company, Burisma. They said, yep, I bribed them, and I've got the goods on them. Apparently, the guy said he's got 15 recordings talking with Hunter Biden and 2 talking with Joe Biden. So he said, I've got the evidence in case I ever got in a tight spot. I wanted the evidence. So
yeah,
here comes
smart.
But here's the question. And this relates to the Trump issue, because I've said the issue with Trump is equal protection under the law. How in the world are you going to go after Trump when I have a myriad of charges against Biden and Hillary Clinton and James Clapper and on and on and on and on, but you don't go after Trump. So the issue is, number one, and this is what Grassley's asking, validly so, why have you been holding on to this document so long? What are you doing? Have you been investigating it? You haven't told us anything. And last but not least, you gave it to Congress and you specifically redacted the part that says there is evidence. This guy says he's got the audio recordings speaking to the president of the United States. So what we see here, and that's why I directly connect this to the Donald Trump issue, the FBI appears to be doing everything within their power to keep from charging Joe Biden, to keep from investigating Joe Biden, which is consistent. Let's not forget, the FBI had the Hunter Biden laptop for 1 year before the 2020 election. And just before the election, the FBI went to Twitter and all of the social media companies and said to them, we think the Russians are going to come out with something and claim that it's a Hunter Biden laptop, but it's all Russian disinformation. They knew it was a lie because they had it. They specifically made that lie up to influence the election. So what we're seeing is the Gestapo here. What we're seeing is a national police department who intentionally acts on behalf of particular politicians or particular parties. So that's one of the reasons that I connect this directly to the Trump indictment.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely seeming like there's some sort of a double standard, especially with this one being serious allegations. This isn't just classified documents that you held in your Corvette or in your basement or in your safe or something. This is actual bribery charges. So let me just kind of break this down and get this straight. So Grassley is now saying that this informant that apparently came forward to the FBI and then the FBI used this form, because we've been hearing about this form, the FD 1023 form, which is, I guess, a form the FBI uses whenever a human source comes to them. It's not verified yet. It's just what's filled out when the source that they have says, hey, this is the information I've got. They fill it all out onto this form. And so it was told to these GOP senators that this form exists and it contains information about Joe Biden and a bribery scheme with a foreign national, right? So Grassley gets that they eventually, this oversight committee gets to see this, but heavily redacted. And from my understanding, the FBI didn't even give it to them. They just showed it to them, let them read it, and then said, anyway, we're taking it back. You can't have this unclassified document, right? So now this source, who apparently is a paid source by the FBI, has been used, very credible, been used by the FBI for many years. And this source claims that So do you know, is the source claiming that they are the ones who have the tape and the bribery scheme between Biden and the Burisma? Are they like the Burisma executive and they're the ones who have the audio recordings? Or are they alleging that they know of the recordings between the Burisma executive and Joe Biden? Do you know which one it is? Because we,
Yes,
of
in
course, don't
fact,
know who the source is.
yes, I can read it to you. According to the 1023, the foreign national possesses 15 audio recordings of phone calls between him and Hunter Biden. The foreign national possesses 2 audio recordings of phone calls between him and then Vice President Joe Biden. These recordings were allegedly kept as a sort of insurance policy for the foreign national in case he got into a tight spot. The 1023 also indicates that then Vice President may have been involved in Burisma employing Hunter Biden. So he didn't know anything about it.
Yeah.
So this guy's now saying he got in the job. Joe Biden. Now, let's not forget, Hunter Biden flew on Air Force Two to Ukraine with Joe Biden. Everything, I mean, if you look at the previous evidence that we know and you compare it to this, it matches up perfectly like a puzzle. But the question arises, what the hell's the FBI doing with this? Why are they hiding it? Why are they always, when it comes to the Biden people, they're hiding it? They don't have any evidence. The Congress can't see what they have. Everything's redacted. Again, it comes back to this is a political maneuver, another political maneuver. It's pretty frightening.
So the FBI informant says the foreign national has these recordings. I still don't know if it's clear if the informant is the foreign national or if the informant just says the foreign national has these things. Because if the informant is the foreign national, then an even bigger question arises, which is why didn't at that point then the FBI say, well, then give us the tapes, we want to hear it, right? Or if this is an informant that says, I know of the guy, the foreign national has these tapes. Even then, did they do an investigation into that foreign national and the tapes? Where are those tapes? Why don't we have those tapes?
Well, I don't know. I don't have a delineation yet between foreign national, if that's the same person, if it's a different person. We do know that the document, the 1023, does say the foreign national has these. So, but it brings up some obvious questions. As I said, I'm a former investigator. For a statewide police department in Maryland, I was the commander of the investigations division. I know how to do this stuff. And I find it impossible to conceive a universe where, as an investigator, someone comes to me with this level of evidence against, when I was here, it would be the governor of Maryland would be our boss, but that someone comes to me with this level of against the governor, and I don't go straight to the attorney general and say, we've got a big problem here, and you have to direct me how to act. Because at that point, the FBI has to make some decision. It's time to go to the Department of Justice. They have not just a legal, but they have a political problem on their hands. But it has to be fully investigated, and they should by now have all of this stuff. The question is, why are you hiding it from the oversight committees?
Yeah, I think the first thing to ask in this whole thing is, did the FBI follow up on that source? Did they follow up on those recordings? Whether the FBI informant was the foreign national or if they knew who the foreign national was, did the FBI do their job? Because if an informant came to you as an investigator and says, I have some information, and you don't then go and investigate that information, aren't you negligent? So wouldn't the FBI be held negligent in this? And the people that were in charge of this investigation, their heads should roll in this situation. But they're protecting the president. They're protecting Joe Biden.
I would even argue further than that. Not only would they be negligent, they would be in violation of the law. They have a duty to act as a result of the position that they hold. You have a duty to act. If I'm a police officer and I'm standing on the street and I see some guy beating some woman to death, I have a duty to act. If I don't act, then I have violated the law. So I would argue that there's a violation. We're looking at a potential violation of the law. So we have two issues. Not one being certainly the investigation against Joe Biden, but the other being what has the FBI done. Now, keep in mind, as citizens, we don't necessarily have a right to know what the FBI is doing in the immediacy because they could let out information that could compromise the investigation. That argument is valid. However, there is no argument that the oversight groups in Congress that they should hold the information from them. And let's not forget, at first they flat out refused to give the 1023 information until Congress threatened to hold them in
Right.
contempt. And even then, it was redacted to the point where it was worthless.
So I
Oh, but
understand
the
the
other thing I might
FBI.
add, one other thing that's
Yeah.
important, and that is the problem they have is Chuck Grassley apparently has a copy of the unredacted 1023.
Yeah, so now he knows what it says. So
Yeah, he knows too
I
much.
think I understand the argument that we're not entitled to exactly everything the FBI is doing in their investigations, sure, because it might compromise the investigation. But aren't we entitled to know whether or not they're investigating?
Absolutely. Yes. Particularly in this, in this, I'll put it like this. Congress has a right to know. And then if Congress can make a decision once they know how much that they would release, so Congress, let's not forget, this is the same FBI that has leaked classified, if you remember, Comey admitted they leaked classified documents to the New York Times.
Yeah.
So here is an FBI that says we can leak classified documents to the media, but we can't give an unclassified document to Congress. This
Yeah.
is shady as can be.
Well, and there's so many different aspects to this entire thing. I mean, not only do you have obviously the sitting president of the United States potentially implicated in this, or who is implicated in this, but then you also have Ukraine and the war. And this is something that, of course, the country has decided to rally around Ukraine to not make Ukraine look bad. There was even that moment when Zelensky started firing all of the people in his inner circle because they were misusing the funds that we were sending them. Remember, there was all these governors and other heads that were, 10 different people that were fired, to try for the appearance of, well, we don't want to be misusing any of this war money that we're being sent, right? So I could see why it's not right. You and I definitely don't agree with this, but I can understand their reasoning where they're thinking, well, we don't want to compromise the president of the United States, and we don't want to compromise our funding for Ukraine in this war against Russia. And this would be showing corruption. This would take out potentially a sitting president. This would be all levels of and the Democratic Party and their complete cover up, the FBI. Lots of big power players completely implicated in this, actually.
Well, the problem is this, again, it becomes the standard. Let's not forget what just happened in New York. The New York State Legislature literally changed the law so that a person who had a complaint against someone for sexual harassment or sexual assault years ago could now have a 1-year period where they could go after the person they accused. They changed that law within an hour after they changed the law. A lawsuit was filed against Donald Trump, and no other suits have been. So they literally changed the law to go after Donald Trump. There are no bounds to go after Donald Trump. But when it comes to Biden, once again, the FBI is just the guard for the neocons, and I don't see an excuse for it. And let me add this. Do you think for 1 second if it was Donald Trump, they'd use that standard? Oh, well, we got a war going on. We can't go after Trump.
Yeah, exactly. No, they would be definitely taking him down. He'd be behind bars by now. They'd say, "We got him. He took a bribe and made a foreign policy decision for the country." And that would definitely take you out completely. But this is really insane. Thank you for filling us in on this, because this has been really complex and trying to, it seems like every week new information comes out. We hear, okay, there's this form with the FBI, and then Comer, I know, came out with a big report, a 36-page report about a month ago, saying there were all these connections between $10 million worth of payments and 9 members of the Biden family or inner circle, and they were all getting money from these foreign companies. And it's like, but these members of his family have no experience, no reason to be employed by these companies, no reason to be accepting $10 million worth of payments, and they didn't have the smoking gun against Biden on that. They had nothing that connected Biden except for, obviously, these people were there in these positions collecting all this money because they were connected to Joe Biden, and they were peddling influence. Maybe the smoking gun's not there, but all of the rest of us know we're not idiots. We know exactly why these family members were making this money.
You can look at it this. Cofer Black, former CIA assistant director, when he went straight to, he was also on the board of Burisma. So the former CIA director, there's money to be made. They overthrew the government. He's on the board of the Burisma. Amos Hochstein, one of Joe Biden's buddies, he works in gas. He was one of the people whose job it was, but he was assigned by Joe Biden to stop Nord Stream from continuing. Right. So he's this big gas guy. As soon as the government was overthrown, he worked for the Obama administration. He dropped his job, and he went to, as soon as they overthrew the government of Ukraine, he quit his job in the Obama administration, went to Ukraine, and got a job on the board of Naftogaz, which is their state gas company, making a fortune. So the issue is this: it wasn't just Biden. When they overthrow a country, they go into that country and they pick the bones like vultures, and they were all there. So they've got to protect Biden, because this is the game. When they throw over, it's like you knock over a person in the street, you pull out their wallet, you take their phone, you take if you're a hoodlum, you're going to take everything somebody has. That's what these neocons do, and it's coming out bit by bit.
Well, and it's also showcasing exactly why we're still in this war. They're thinking, well, we throw a few billion at it, but that's okay because we're making billions more off of being there in Ukraine and all of these different companies that we've got going there. So they're protecting their corporate interests by continuing to support Ukraine in this war. And that's also coming out in this. I mean, this is all making it very apparent. When there's money to be made, that's what the military's for. They're the henchmen to protect the corporate interests and the money-making machine. So, Garland, thank you so much for joining us. Always a pleasure. You're always so informed. Garland Nixon, political analyst, radio talk show host, and also former investigator. So definitely helpful in this. Garland, do you want to tell people where they can find you?
Yes, well, actually, in a little bit, I'll be on KPFK at 3 p.m. Pacific time. I'll be on KPFK doing my show. But my YouTube show is the best place. I have a YouTube show, and I do what Kim does, only not quite as well.
Oh, that is not true. That is not true. You're one of the best, in my opinion. So, Garland, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Well, I'm someone who doesn't sleep well, and my 11-year-old shepherd is getting older, and she has some aches and pains when she walks. It's getting obvious. So this is why I looked into cbdistillery.com for a natural way to help me get some sleep and give my furry family member the relief that she needs. CB Distillery has over 2 million satisfied customers. 90% of customers reported that they sleep better using CBD. 81% said CBD helps them with stress. 80% said CBD helps with aches and pains after physical activity. So if you struggle to get a good night's sleep, if you're dealing with too much stress and could use a little calm in your life, if you suffer with pain and discomfort, especially after physical exercise, then try CBD from the source that I trust. That is cbdistillery.com. You will get 20% off your order when you enter my name, Kim, at checkout. There's no prescription required. That's cbdistillery.com. Promo code Kim for 20% off.